Do
No,
another
it's
one.
fine.
I'll do it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, this is the intro. Okay. 1, 2, 3, clap. Yeah, there's about 6/10, I'd say.
Yeah, six tenths. You're a
I
Formula
figured that's
1.
how it is through Discord.
Yeah, you're definitely a Formula One fan. There's about 6/10 difference there,
It's not a full second. Or just a part of a second.
but it's not
like
half
one
a
of
second.
duh.
It's a little more than half a second. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, welcome to the Final Sector podcast. Now, Final Sector podcast, I thought you guys were the backmarkers. I hear none of you ask. Yeah, we had to change our name because we found out, or Kyle found out actually, about a week ago, that there was already someone called the Backmarkers F1 show or something. So,
On
oops.
YouTube, yeah.
If you're watching, sorry. We changed it. It's all good. We're Final Sector now. There's no one else called Final Sector. So, and we think that's a better name anyway. So, that's the name going forward. Something that we might not have had up yet is the logo. It might still show the blue flags for a bit while we get that figured out. If it doesn't, then cool. But if it does, then the logo is sort of already in the work. You know, Kyle, you're doing most of that anyway. So,
Yep.
that should be up soon. But for now, we're going to do some news, and there's actually a lot of news to talk about. I've got a big old thing of notes here. One of the biggest ones, I guess, is the fact that Hamilton signed with Mercedes finally came to some sort of agreement. He signed a 1-year deal, which I think was a bit interesting to other people, including myself. But yeah, he's going to be with Mercedes, which I think everyone really knew anyway. So
I think, it says a lot, and I think people were guessing that it might only be a year, considering it was taking a while, and they got to the point where I think the chance of them not signing anything and him not continuing was incredibly low. If they would have gone down that path, they probably would have announced it a while ago, so it was cleaner for all parties involved anyway.
Yeah,
so I think the fact that they maybe had it late is a case of saying, okay, for now we've worked something out, but I think immediately now the discussions and everyone's talk is going to be, okay, what about next year? And will it be multi-year for next year or 1 year for next year? So this is almost just like a formality. They just have to announce it. If they didn't have to and they could just drive without any sort of formal clause or contract, then they probably just would. But the year definitely, it says a lot of what most people were expecting, that obviously they've still got a lot to work through, and even some of the public details that have come out about the contract. I know about them starting a new kind of like charity initiative with Hamilton, with the Dalton, the Ineos owners, I believe, the owner of Ineos, I think there was a big part he was saying with Hamilton. They're going to start up some charity organization. The details I don't think have been fully announced.
I couldn't find anything on it. No, it just says that the new agreement builds upon a joint commitment to greater diversity plus inclusion in motorsport, and it takes the form of a joint charity foundation.
Yes.
So that's all I could find as well. So
and
which is
that
great.
Also says words about, well, it is great, and showing that Hamilton, obviously you wouldn't be surprised if that's something he was pushing. It's not like the other side would be pushing it and Hamilton's going, oh, I don't want to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think he'd be the spearhead.
Something that he's pushing. So I guess the year makes sense in that regard. It's still interesting, given at the end of this year and heading into the new format that none of the drivers that Mercedes are interested in will have a contract. So that's between George and Bottas and Hamilton.
Yeah, for sure.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do
Stoffel
there.
Van Dorn, he's coming.
De Vries, he's finally appearing. Verline, no. So we'll have to see. But I guess it's a case of where silly season, the last thing's finally been signed. Immediately, let's go into the next silly season.
Of course,
It's been a nice extended. We had some announcements early, this announcement late, and already these announcements are all saying, there's no reason why even at the start of this year we might even start seeing things come out. So it's still all wrapped up now. We can kind of finally put last year to the past, and really now it's all
focus
about
on
this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it will be interesting to see. With both of them being on 1-year contracts, I reckon going into the end of the year and next year, like you said, silly season, that's going to be a massive talking point again, particularly with new regulations, whether or not, especially if Hamilton wins the championship again this year, he'll have got the record and, the most championships for a Formula One driver, whether or not he'll even want to go into that next year. And Bottas's, I guess, his position in that team's, while I think Mercedes are really behind him, it's been under question because he just hasn't been able to get the same pace out of that car as Hamilton. So I think come next year that Mercedes those Mercedes seats could prove very interesting. We've got a new Formula One team from Monaco is poised for entry into the sport as well, which this is actually the first I'm hearing of it, and sort of the last week. But they've apparently been wanting to come into the sport since, I think it was 2018 or 2019. They've been sort of ready to sort of move into the sport. But the whole $200 million joining fee was the thing that was setting them back. And recently, Stefano Domenicali, who's the CEO, he's talking about possibly waiving that fee. I don't know if it was just for their team or just in general. But yeah, apparently that one came in last year to, quote, protect franchise value and prevent false starts in the sport, which, I mean, it does make a lot of sense, but the fact that he's sort of getting rid of it this quickly means, it's probably a hindrance in new teams coming into the sport. I would think it's a big investment just to even not even started racing. That's just to get your foot in the door. So, we'll see what happens if that does get waived. Then we could see this new Monaco team coming in, which would be good. It's always good to see new teams in F1. Haven't seen one since Haas, I think. So.
Yes, they were the last one to come in on their own assets rather than acquiring another team's assets. I think, as you say, that the initial $200 million entry fee was put in to kind of, preserve the rights of the teams that I guess had been there for a while and had stuck through, some quite difficult changes when other teams had dropped off and such.
Yeah.
And I think also, as you say, to almost, for new teams coming in that we don't get any more, they're trying to obviously move away from the past where we'd have teams that would, teams like Life that would show up, cause an absolute mockery, and then effectively have to be barred from entering because, it was putting the sport into disrepute and such.
Yeah.
And especially in a time where people are being critical of F1, trying to be, take away from the essence or the heart of what F1 should be and such. So, but I think the clause in terms of being able to waive that fee, I think is in terms of if there are genuine outfits that almost all teams would be,
sure,
for having on the grid.
Yeah.
And maybe that $200 million fee being waived, maybe that $200 million fee would still hurt them a little more than if they didn't have it. So I think that option is there where it's saying it's not a hard cut fast rule, like, no, there's no exemptions, you have to pay the fee no matter who you are to get in. I think it's more
case
saying,
by case basis, yeah.
It's a case of saying if we met with all the teams and they said, look, these guys want to enter, should we waive it or not, then they're allowed to have that discussion and decide if they want to waive that or not, depending on each circumstance. So if they see, a genuine, team come in and say, hey, we want to join, and there's no reason to think they're not reputable and such, then they could agree to waive that fee.
Yeah.
It's not a hard cut and stone rule.
Yeah, I mean, the team, it's called Monaco F1 Racing Team is the name as far as I can tell. But it was apparently originally headed by Adrian Campos. It was him and Salvatore Gandolfo, which is a fantastic name. But he still apparently wants to go ahead with joining the team, despite Adrian passing away, which is really, really cool. They were waiting for, the budget cap and the new regulations anyway, so chances are they probably wouldn't have come in till... Well, I think they wanted to come in this year, but then obviously COVID happened and, pushed everything back. So I think we might not hear anything for a little bit, but, come next year, I think there could be some real discussions about them making their way into the sport. The other thing I thought was really interesting as well is the fact that they're a Monaco racing team. So if they make it in, they've got a Monegasque racing driver in Charles Leclerc. So I wonder if they're going to try and entice him into the team if they happen to make it in, because there's
how much money have they got?
Yeah, that's the big thing, because he's such a hot commodity that but the whole the team from that country racing with Renault have a big thing where they really like having their French drivers, and you would think that a team from Monaco's so small, having a Monegasque driver in there would be huge for their team.
Yep.
So anyway, something to keep in mind. One thing I did also see is that Pascal Wehrlein was among their driver roster when they first were looking at heading into the sport. I don't know if that's still the case, but if Wehrlein's still on the driver roster and they join, then he could make way for him to come back into F1 as well.
I'm not sure what Wehrlein's doing at the moment. Is it DTM? I think he immediately went to DTM after...
Did he do
his
Formula E?
F1 stint.
Or no, that was someone else.
Oh, he is. Yes,
He was Formula
sorry,
E,
me.
yeah.
Yes, he's quite big in Formula E.
Yes,
of course,
yeah.
I should know that.
Yeah.
He was with Mahindra for a while, and then I believe this year
Yeah.
he's changed. It was a big thing. Mahindra really wanted to keep him, but he changed to, I don't remember who. I could say Porsche, but I'm guessing.
No idea.
But he changed to another pretty big team, I think, for this year.
Right, yeah.
You're 100% correct. I think maybe he did do a little stint in DTM, but primarily, yeah, he's found a home
Possibly,
in
yeah.
Formula E, quite
Yeah.
successful.
It'd be interesting to see if he's still in the thoughts and they make it into the team, whether or not, you know. I feel like he's done all right in Formula E. I don't watch a lot of it, but
Yes.
you would think if he's given an opportunity to come back into F1, he would probably take it. The Alpine Driver Academy, which I guess is new because it's no longer the Renault Academy.
Yes.
But they have 5 drivers that they have announced for the academy. 3 really big names in F2 in Guan Yu Zhou, Oscar Piastri, and Christian Lundgaard. And then 2 drivers, Victor Martins and Kaio Collet. And they're in F3 at the moment as well. So I don't recognize those 2 names, but yeah, 3 really, really good drivers in F2 for that Alpine Driver Academy, which is good. There seems the driver academies at the moment seem to be ramping up again. There was a time that there wasn't a whole lot in any of the academies. There was sort of this lack of drivers. But yeah, the last year you've seen them, you know, Ferrari and now Alpine and Mercedes they tend to pick sort of 1 or 2 really, really strong drivers. But, you know, then the Red Bull program always they have drivers all the time, but they've kind of gone through a dry patch where they've had to keep people like Kvyat and, you know, Gasly or,
As
you know,
we discussed last time, I think.
Yeah, so... but yeah, these academies are now getting a lot of drivers, and there's a lot of good drivers coming through as well. Like I feel like this season and last season in F2 are probably going to be some of the more competitive ones.
I think in terms of this year being a year to really prove some drivers, there's kind of, you know, we had like the drivers that really stood out last year, and they've kind of all graduated and moved on to different things. So I think now we're going to see almost like the next generation of F2 drivers, seeing who proves their point. You know, you've got a few new drivers coming up, notably in this discussion, of course, is Piastri.
Yep.
But even in Lundgaard and Zhou, you know, they've both had experience there for a while now, and they're both expected to basically win or basically in contention to win at this stage.
Yep.
So I think, there's a lot of drivers there now, even Schwartzman, you know, that really this year is the year where, you know, we'll see the next set that come up, and not just the next set in terms of who's potentially going to make the leap to F1, but also the next set of drivers that might have in the next few years in F2 to kind of prove themselves and see how they go there. So
I think Schwartzman and Eilert, obviously there was the big discussion between Eilert, Schwartzman, Schumacher, obviously for that Formula One seat
as the Ferrari drivers,
the Ferrari, slightly sidebar, but I think another article I read that I think Eilert's getting some practice sessions for Ferrari. Benotto came out and said...
Yeah, he was out of a drive because he didn't secure a drive, and I think part of it was funding, and part of it he just missed out to Schumacher and Mazepin in terms of that Alpha seat, and potentially taking over a Haas seat, or potentially taking over an Alpha seat from one of their 2 drivers.
Yeah.
But now Ferrari picked him up as their official test and reserve driver, so he's technically still in motorsport on the book somewhere. When he was looking a bit grim and he didn't really know where he was going to go. So
right, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him a few sessions, given he's their potential driver. And I think Giovinazzi did a similar thing in the past as well, so he could still end up with a drive if he does
That's
well.
true. Yeah.
Giovinazzi had, I think, those few sessions for Sauber. They were Sauber at the time, I believe, in 2018.
Must have been, yeah.
Because notably he had at China those 2 spins at the last bend on the same weekend. So he had, So Eilert, from going to a point where he thought he was really out of luck and he might be almost done with motorsport or have to, find somewhere maybe in a lower sports car team. It's looking good for him, but still, I guess that's good as well from the Renault side, because of course now they've got, from the Alpine side rather, we should get in the habit of saying.
You're David Croft.
Also,
keep calling it. Yeah.
Don't compare me to that. No, kidding. I love you. From their side, 'cause they've got Alonso now, and they've got Ocon. It'll be it'll be interesting to see if there's a driver from their academy that can come in next year, or whether they maybe have one of the F2 drivers also as their official reserve driver, or maybe in 2 years' time if they maybe pick up one of those drivers.
Yeah.
So certainly their 3 reserve drivers in F2, I'd say they're almost just saying to them, look, you might have 1 or 2 years in F2 now. All of you, we're happy to keep you on. When someone's speculating maybe they'll drop Zhao and Lundgaard, considering they've had them for a few years now and they haven't exactly shined where they might have been expected to, especially Guan Yu Zhao.
He started I think it was last season, or is it the season before? He started really, really well.
He started very strong. He did get very unlucky. I think he was poised to win one of the races in Austria.
Yeah.
Might have been the Styrian Grand Prix before he had a failure, but he still kind of was almost there, but a lot of drivers still around him had their high moments compared to what he would have. So I think certainly they're saying, look, we've got the 3, they're saying almost to the public, saying we've got the 3 of them, we still have faith in them. We're probably just going to see how they go for 1, maybe 2 years, and then pick the best one, and then we'll see who comes into Alpine when we figure out what they're doing with their 2 current drivers.
It's interesting you mention that, because the Alpine Academy director has actually, addressed the what they call the potential headache that could be created with having 3 F2 drivers and no F1 seats, particularly that they're out.
Yes.
They don't have a customer team at the moment, so which is a big thing. They looked at the Ferrari Academy and they thought, we have the potential to have the same issue. So they're actually already in talks with other teams to see if there is any way they can place drivers in other teams despite not having a connection to Alpine.
Yep.
So, which is good that they're trying, despite not having the seats available, probably for. You'd think that they'd want to stick with Ocon and Alonso for a couple of years. You wouldn't bring Alonso for 1 year.
At least 2 years, unless either of them faltered. Yeah, you'd think.
So, there's if say Piastri or Guan Yu Zhou, they have, they win the championship and they come out next year and they're like, we don't have a spot for you. Sorry, it'd be a bit of a shame. So it's good to see that they're looking for. Alternatives for them to get them into the sport, to say, okay, we've got, it might not be Alpine, it might not be a mid-range team, but we found this
customer even,
or a Renault customer, but we found this team. It's a little bit of a lower team. The Monaco F1 racing team. We can put you, we'll put you in there.
Where do you think they're getting their money from?
Yeah, we'll put you in there for a season. Just
Cyril's been seen around Monaco recently.
It's perfect. But yeah, I mean, it's good that they're looking into that and they're trying to look for alternatives, because I think, we're both really biased, but we've seen how good Piastri is, and I don't see any reason why he can't do really well this year as well. So
similar to Schwartzman, repeat his kind of efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Alpine, one of the bigger recent ones is the fact that Alonso has gotten into an accident. Obviously, you would have seen it if you're on any sort of social media. There's a big outpouring for him, which was really, really cool to see. Outpouring of love and support. But he got into a road accident while cycling, and he got a fractured jaw, was, as far as I can see, all that was... I
believe was the worst of the injuries.
That was it, yeah. So he underwent surgery, and the medical team said they were satisfied with his progress. He was on Twitter, I think a day or 2 after the accident, and being like, I'm all good, I'm going to be fine. Yep. And they said he's going to be fine for testing as well. So that's really, really good to hear. So it hasn't really affected him that much. But obviously, if you're watching, Fernando, and I know you are, we wish you all the best. We wish you all the best.
I think we know Fernando and how resilient he is, and I think even if he was a bit sore or beaten up, then he'd get back on training and everything as soon as he could. I think they said as well they were going to give him 4 to 5 days, I think, proper rest, before he tried to stress anything. But they were confident that after that period he could kind of resume, maximum training and normal training through this time of the year. Hearing those kind of things is a good sign, considering it could have been, quite a big accident. There's certainly been people that have fed off a lot worse than him, so I imagine he's thinking he's quite lucky, and he's going to just go back into it to show to everyone, look, that I'm all good, and this is
Well, it was really, really lucky that it wasn't that it was jaw. Like, the jaw is not really something you use that much. Like, it's not his leg or his arm or
it's still strained, but you can do training and not really
exactly
you don't have to push that too hard.
He got very, very lucky in just even where he injured himself, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but obviously we hope to see him back in full flight come testing, and no issues from there, and
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I guess this is sort of a 3-in-1 kind of thing. But on Thursday, what is today? It's Sunday. About 3 days ago on Thursday, there was a big F1 commission meeting discussing 3 things that there's been a lot of talk about.
Pertinent to the future, yeah.
Very much so. The first one is that there was the to be determined race in race 3 that, it's coming this close to the season, they'd have to announce it pretty soon. It looked likely it was going to be racing at Portimao. They have said that it's almost certainly going to be at Portimao, which is awesome. It's good to go back to Portugal. The only thing that might hinder that is that the coronavirus cases have been rising there a bit, apparently. But despite that, they still think it's going to go ahead. So they must, they've dealt with this for half a year or 2/3 of a year last year.
Kind of
so
local governments and authorities, so you imagine they would have already had
cleared
that talks ahead of time. And I guess they're just thinking they don't want to publicly announce it until they've got that 100% green light, plans marked off and everything.
Yeah, definitely. So that means there were talks that if they couldn't get something sorted, there would be like Bahrain double headers and things like that. So they do 2 at Bahrain, which doesn't look like it's going to happen anymore. And as of right now, there's also no Chinese Grand Prix for a 2nd year in a row. So, a little bit of a shame, but what can you do? It is what it is. We're going back to Portimao. That's always really good. We got Portimao and Imola.
We'll take the good news. Yeah.
So the second thing that came out of that was they're looking at doing Saturday sprint races, which is something that's been discussed a lot. The whole qualifying. The qualifying thing's been a discussion for
changing up Saturday basically has been a discussion
for a long time. And there was the 2 big ones that always came out on top were the sprint races and the reverse grids. Stefano Domenicali's basically said, no, we don't like reverse grids. That's not happening. Shut up about it. But the sprint races the sprint races concept apparently received a very broad. What did they say? It was a broad support of it. It wasn't.
There wasn't
unanimous.
Too many people that said no, this is silly. There was quite a lot of interest to take discussions further, and almost you wouldn't say confirmation, but almost everyone wants to try something. And this so far, especially coming this year, seems to be the best kind of thing that's been suggested in quite a while.
Yeah,
the most that people have been open to for a while as well.
Yeah, sure. For those who don't know what the concept of a sprint race is, basically. The idea is that it will replace qualifying. So the sprint race will set the grid for the race on Sunday, and free practice 2 will be replaced with the qualifying for the sprint race. So it'll go free practice 1, qualifying for the sprint race, and then you go free practice 3, sprint race, which sets the grid for the race on Sunday. So there's talks there might be points for the sprint race top 8 as well, just like reduced points. We'll see if that's something that they'll actually do. But the idea is that they're going to try it at 3 races. So I think there's 23 races or something this year. So
I think booked in so far, tentatively.
So 3 races, while it's not a lot, I think it's enough to get the data to see whether or not it'll actually work. So I'm excited. I've had a little look online, and it's very polarizing online. A lot of fans are saying, "Why change it? Just stick with the same thing. This works." Blah blah blah. And it's like, sure, but for 3 races, just try something a bit different. This is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see what it brings, because if it works, imagine what that means. We get effectively 2 races in a weekend. What are your thoughts on it? Because I'm mostly for it, but I do understand why people aren't really excited for it. So
I do like that they are still trying something new, and they're trying to almost, rather than take something away that people like and replace it with something, they're trying to almost add it in, you know what I mean? We do have these 3 practice sessions, and if we replace one practice session with something else, I don't think too many people are going to kick and scream and go, oh, practice 2 is my favourite session of the weekend, how dare you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I personally, am happy for the change. I do get that I guess some people are concerned in terms of how it will be viewed. Like, if someone wins a practice race, do you say they're an official race winner or not? You know what I mean? Do you add it to the record books?
Well, that's what they do in
I know
F2.
these are only tiny things, but for a lot of the people who are really into F1, they are the things that they follow, you know what I mean? Like, at the start of every week, and you do often think of stats and where people are and everything, and how many wins does this person need to that, or how many races has it been since this guy's been on the podium. So in that case, you could just say, well, look, it's its own little thing. They'll start its own stats and that. Yes, in the big picture, this doesn't really matter. I guess that's just a lot of what I see in my discussion, considering I follow a lot of, diehard fans, and that is what they're thinking about.
Yep.
Rather than people who maybe watch casually or watch on the side, their opinions, of course, are going to be different. But I think, a lot of the teams that are in there have been in there so long, because there's only really this select core of them, that I think if they have been talking about it, and they've obviously would have gone through a lot more different permutations and discussions than they would have released publicly to us to think about, I think the fact that they're for it, I think that's just a good sign to me. I kind of trust them to make the judgment. Maybe 5-10 years ago, when we had that tweaked qualifying format, it was a disaster. The teams were kind of saying ahead of time, this is going to be a disaster, don't do it. Maybe back then I would have been like, I don't really have much confidence. But look, if they're saying now that they think it's worth a shot, and the teams are saying it, and the board is saying it, then I would trust their judgment. I'd say, look, regardless of what I think, just as a fan of the sport that wants it to do better, I would trust their judgment with this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I'm keen for it, but I totally get if people have their own
reservations about it.
Yeah, which I like that they're saying, look, we'll just try it out this year. This year may still be a bit messy compared to last year, and even how messy last year was in the end. Yes, they got a lot together, but it still was quite messy and jumped up, and we had like some races where they only raced on the 2 days. People still consider it as a full season. No one says, that wasn't a genuine season, that podium didn't count, that win didn't count, you know what I mean? So this I still even think will be less messy than that might have looked, and therefore I still think anything that happens will, you won't look back at that and go, oh, that was yuck, that was disgusting, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Unlike the qualifying in the past, where we had it for 2 races, where they tweaked it, and we still look back and go, ugh, but once again, that was a replacement of something. While this is an extra thing, if it doesn't work out, then it's not going to really affect it that much, I don't think.
That's true. I think, I mean, in talking about it, in thinking about it, that you still see in like F2 and F3, they have the sprint races as well. You still have the best drivers sort of make it to the top most of the time. So you do get a little bit of shake-up, which is, I think that's what they're aiming for. But generally, you do still see the same, handful of drivers making it to the top of the sprint races and
consistently getting the points and on the
consistently
podium.
getting them. So.
And it works in that format as well, because F2 is obviously a proving ground for other things. So you mix drivers up a bit, put them in different positions. You can have a driver that's really fast, but if he can't overtake or keep himself clean in traffic, you know what I mean? So and I think that's also why this year, of course, they're moving to the 3-race format for those as well, to shake it up even more and to force certain drivers to have to prove themselves even more, not just through their wins. So it definitely makes sense in that format.
They've got until the season start to have a final decision. They're going to have a complete plan. I think that was... As far as I can see, there was the broad support, but obviously everyone wanted to know a little bit more in terms of details before they actually go ahead and do the vote for it.
Vote on it,
So they said they'll have a final decision by the time the season starts. So chances are you probably won't see it for the first couple of races, I would think. But I am curious to see where they're going to try it. Maybe somewhere like Spain, a track that everyone sort of knows pretty well.
It'll be interesting, if they tried it somewhere they know that they might have a lot of overtaking, or maybe they'll try one maybe where you don't have a lot of overtaking, maybe one where you have a lot. Maybe see how it works in different tracks. So
we'll have to see.
I don't know which 3 I would pick. That's an interesting question. Which 3 would you pick to try it out on?
Oh god, how much time have we got to discuss?
Something to think about for next time.
Yeah, if you want a long form version of this podcast, then let us know and we'll talk for an hour.
Check
on
out
which
SoundCloud. It totally exists.
The third thing to come from that, we spent a lot of time on that topic, but the third thing to come from the meeting is the engine freeze that Red Bull were fighting for. That has gone through from next year.
Confirmed.
So completely confirmed. Every single team voted in favour, so it was completely unanimous, which I guess surprised me a little bit, considering there were teams out there like, was it Ferrari, I think, or Renault? One of those that were like, they were just not having it at all. They were not happy about it. I think it was Renault, actually, from memory.
And a lot of it, I think, links into future, what's happening with the future as well. So I think the fact that they did discuss parts of the future, and I think they outlined 5 or 6 key points of what they want the future of F1 to look like in terms of engines, which were very vague. But regardless, outside of that, I think the teams were all really only going to be unanimous for this if they had some clear outline of what it looked like after that freeze. So obviously, discussions have progressed in that factor, which is good because they're thinking of it ahead of time, and all the teams are happy with what that looks like, which is, again, good. So I think the fact it's been confirmed now, and there doesn't seem to be too many rumbles about it, poses well for the short term and the long term.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Nice to get that kind of settled and go, oh, cool, that's another reason to look hopeful about the future.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, keeping that... I guess it's a Honda power unit. I guess they're going to call it a Red Bull unit now because it's theirs
rebadged as what they wish, but it still will be the Honda.
The Honda, yeah. So keeping that fourth engine manufacturer in there, and maybe they can try and get possibly another customer team. Who knows? That'd be really good. But yeah, not losing Honda almost as quickly as it joined is a good thing. So speaking of long term, they've sort of come out about the 2025 as part of this. Sort of discuss the 2025 power units and what they want from them. They want them to be, and this is, it does still feel very middle of the road that they want, which is just with their wording. But yeah, they want their power units.
They're being very vague, but I think it shows that there's got to be more specifics under the hood that they've talked about. I think they need that to make this decision. To freeze, but. Certainly, we've kind of just got some vague points for now, which I think, you're going to go into. Yeah,
so they want it to be environmentally stable and relevant, which I think was one of the biggest things is the relevancy. So right now, the power units, I think you've talked about this, is they're stuck in that sort of that middle ground where they're not, they're not really relevant to anything, but they're also not really good environmentally, and they're not super fast. They're not like the top of the line, the V12.
They're not pushing the hybrid tech, but they're not pushing the efficiency of the
exactly. They're not. Side. They're sort of just hitting this middle ground where it's not really attractive to anyone. It's just ultra expensive, and it's not attractive to new manufacturers to come in, and so they want to try and make it a little bit more relevant and environmentally stable. They want fully sustainable fuel. They want to be able to reduce costs, which will be attractive to new manufacturers, and they still want it to be powerful and emotive, were the words that they use. So again, it still sounds like they want the best of everything, but they're going to have to make some concessions. And it doesn't sound
like they're wanting to make a massive change away from what they're using. They're not trying to say we're going to redefine it, we're going to massively change it. They're trying to adapt it almost. Which isn't too surprising. I guess it depends to each their own what they want. I wouldn't mind a proper shake-up, you know what I mean? But I think it isn't the best interest to do it. But then I guess you have to remember as well that this change is going to, run basically into the 2030s. Because you have to think up to there what engine's going to look like, you know what I mean? Is it going to have any relevance? I guess that's why they're trying to push this whole biofuel thing.
I think that's going to be a big
seems like
thing.
That's the direction they're going. You're saying, look, we're happy to keep going down this route, even though in real world relevancy that's dying out. But biofuels are starting to blow up. I think, as you said last time, there are a few biofuels are kind of blowing up in other lesser tier motorsports. I know for some of the endurance races, they have a class for the cars that run biofuels, for example. So obviously there's some pushing out there for it. And it's relatively unexplored as far as I know, in terms of in a mass commercial market thing. So honestly, that could be a point where they say, look, rather than just joining what is big, which is a lot of the electric side, and fully going there, we're kind of going to push more this other side, which hasn't really been explored, but we see a lot of potential in. I'm not against what they've said so far. As I said, I think there's still a lot that they're kind of hiding until they say more about it.
Which they've got like 4 years to to come up with this stuff.
They still want to announce it as soon as they can, but I guess because they have to freeze as well, it's not like teams won't know when to stop developing the current and when to start developing the next gen. They're kind of saying, look, for now, 2021, go full bar on your development, put in your 2022 upgrades, but after the start of that, then it'll be a freeze, and we'll let you know when we've got the new regs. And even then, they might even help, research or focus on it. Who knows, you know what I mean?
Sure,
They could even spend a bit more time thinking about that, researching their own, suggesting things. So it kind of it's working nicely together, like a nice little puzzle how this is all working out, which I think the teams that were the last to say whether they were going to agree to this freeze or not were waiting to see if that was the general premise and the idea that F1 wants to go forward with. So it looks like they're all happy to go with that. So it's a win-win for a lot of parties.
Absolutely.
As we said before.
Yeah. Well, I got one or two other things. The one thing I saw today was that Nico Hülkenberg has been retained as Aston's test and reserve driver, so he's still got his foot in the door. He's not going away anytime soon. I guess he impressed enough in the couple of races he raced for Racing Point that they want to keep him on, which makes a lot of sense. I think there's still a lot of people hoping he'll make his way back into F1, and this is just him saying, "Hello, I'm still here. Yes, hello."
There's no reason that I shouldn't be here. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe that discussion will pop up again when Stroll gets COVID again and Hulkenberg gets P1 and everyone's happy. I don't know. I can dream.
I don't think he was the official driver last year because I think there was some. Not? I know a few people put out some. I'm not sure. I just know a few people put out some videos last year when he first became as a replacement, and a lot of teams actually looked within and realized they didn't actually have a solid backup plan in terms of their drivers. Mercedes, for example, had Van Dorn and Gutierrez, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, no, but Van Dorn for most of the race weekends was stuck with FE, so he could have even been there, and Gutierrez actually had an elapsed super license, so he wouldn't have been able to do it last minute without a bit of paperwork. Yep. So I think a few teams realized that, and I think Force India as well were technically sharing the development drivers because they're Mercedes customers. I don't think they had their own. Technically, they might have had an F2 driver linked or something. So I think that's why Hulk, although he was linked there, I don't think he was their official driver. It made sense to pull him in, but I believe he was third or fourth in queue. But the others just really couldn't be there without either pulling them out of what they're in or signing a lot of papers in the form of Gutierrez. And that's at the time when a lot of teams actually said, okay, actually, we need to actually make sure we've got our drivers here and making sure that you can have a driver that's there every weekend in the garage.
Yep, sure.
So I think it makes sense that they're saying, look, Hulk is doing other things, but he's not doing a huge amount, and obviously he still proved the skill last year, despite the fact that, 24 hours before some of the races he was pulled in, he was having a beer on his couch, having a nice dinner or whatever it was, and he still performed in the Force India, which is still, it was a fairly easy drive, but it's still a pretty tricky car to drive from what we've heard, you know what I mean? It's still based on the Merc, which can be quite tricky. So, no-brainer to sign him. He's not doing a lot. He obviously really enjoyed last year, as you say. He still wants to put his name out there. So it shows his commitment as well to say, even if he's not going to be doing a huge amount, he's still excited about F1. He still wants to be there. He's still happy to use his time to be there,
for sure.
Travel around with everyone. So yeah, it's win-win again.
Yeah.
Lots of win-wins this week.
Yeah. I think that's just about everything I've got in my notes, and it's not anything I've seen. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, but that's
nothing major. That covered everything that I'd looked at recently. Yeah,
perfect. All right, cool. Well, that was a big old news week with our brand new YouTube name. Tune in next week when they change our name again because we've copyrighted something. We've taken someone else's copyrighted name. No, not this time. But yeah, if you want to see a long form, we have had a little bit of a discussion about possibly doing a longer form podcast where we go into a little bit more detail, although we went into a detail on a couple of these, but like really discuss one or two topics, sort of an hour long. We can do something like that. Otherwise, we'll keep it to this. Holy crap, it's already 40 minutes. I was going to say short form. We're looking at possibly starting an F1 2020 game co-op campaign soon. I've been getting into the game and learning how to use manual, and it's been going actually a lot better than I thought.
It's been going well.
Haven't been spinning much at all. Definitely not. And a video, probably the next video, I think, we're going to do our 2022 driver predictions. So we want to try
Given
and
that everything's signed up now, what better time to do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to see what we think about what the drivers are going to happen for next year. We also want to do a video for possibly before and after F1 testing as well, like predictions for testing and then our thoughts on testing afterwards. So lots of videos in the works. Hopefully you'll stick around and watch those. If not, we don't want you anyway. So
try again in a few months.
Yeah.
Come back later maybe when it's more refined. We'll be here.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment. Again, we always like feedback. If you have any questions you want us to answer, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you for the next video. Thanks for watching, y'all. Goodbye.
Catch us.